To another session. This will be our third meeting. Now today we're going to talk about some of the management of some of these statistics that we have available through CU Base. So you may be thinking about some reports that you may want to monitor to talk about the effectiveness of your tiered service scoring program, as well as some forecasting options in the event that you wish to analyze your tiered service program to determine if any changes are necessary, but also to see where members would lie if you did make a change. One of the configuration options that I want to allude to that we didn't really talk about during our first configuration class was the ability to schedule point range changes. So you do have the ability to set up an effective date based on some of the forecasting and effectiveness tools that we review or you would review on a monthly basis. You do have the ability to schedule those point range changes so that they can coincide with the next scoring. So for example, you may meet with your management team, for example, and then understand that you'd like to make a point range change, that you communicated it and marketed to your members. You can actually schedule that ahead of time so that everything would be good to go. The other configuration option that may come into play today that I would like to allude to as we start talking about some of the reports and options that are available for products and services per member. We talked about this a little bit last week. When we went into a member's account, we were able to see right through that tiered service badge that appears on the inquiry, phone operator, and teller screens how many products and services that member had. That is something that is calculated during the actual tiered service routine, which is going to be done on the first of the month every month. So we'll look at the products and services per member at that particular time based on the snapshot at the end of the month there. So I can come in here and I can look at what type of services that should be counted towards the lower half of the screen. So you may want to select services that you would provide at the credit union. If there's a service that your credit union doesn't currently take part in, you do have the ability to uncheck that, so that way the services per member would or would not be counted appropriately. The most common one that I see credit unions maybe uncheck is the safe deposit boxes, if, for example, your credit union doesn't have any safe deposit boxes. The big decisions that you'll want to make is towards the top of the screen when we talk about products per member. This is where you can specify whether it's per account. So I'm looking at the savings products here. So if I happen to be a member that has a vacation club, a Christmas club, and 3 sub-shares, I would actually have 5 accounts. So I would have 5 savings products, for example. If I just happen to have the 000 regular share account, that would be 1 product. You do have the ability to do it by dividend application. So if I had a regular share account and 3 sub-share accounts, that's technically 2 products. So therefore, I would receive 2 products in my calculation when it's run during the routine on the first of the month. And then per application type, that would be savings, checking, IRA, escrow, closed-end loan, and then a open-end loan or line of credit product. That would be based on that. So if I had a savings account and sub-share accounts, those are both considered an application type FH for share accounts. So I would receive 1 product based on that calculation. So you kind of want to use that routine as you start thinking about how you would like to define this. Loans, very similar process. It's by application type. So loans and open-end loans or line of credit products, as well as by loan category or per account. I do see a lot of credit unions who do it per account as opposed to some of the other options that are available out there. But again, this would be how you would want to discuss what your credit union considers an actual product and service. Where this comes into play is if we go out to our management menu, maybe it's actually in our marketing menu. Let me take a look. it's on one of our other management menus. So we have our products and services per member that we can look at. I have the ability to drill this down on a specific branch for a specific account open date range, or even a specific account opening employee, as you can see towards the center of the screen. How that may be important is I may want to review a specific employee during a specific open date range to maybe verify how many products and services this particular employee is giving to each member as they open up their accounts, or maybe a specific branch for an account opening date of March. I want to see the products and services per member. I want to ensure that my team is cross-selling and executing at least 2 to 3 products and 2 to 3 services every single time a membership is open. I have the ability to see products per member or services per member, or I can display both of them. As you can see towards the bottom of the screen, we do have the note towards the bottom of the screen just to remind you again that this particular data is generated during the tiered service scoring routine. I simply hit enter. I'm going to be able to get a year's worth of data to understand what my products and services were per member. Now, I happen to be in a test credit union, so you can see that my services per member are actually quite low at 0.3. You have the ability to review this information. Now, when I start looking at this information, anything January, February, March, April, May, or year to date is going to be this year's information for 2012. The June, July, August, September, October, November, December, any future months of the current year will be last year's data. So I could almost draw a line right here between May and June, as this data would be 2012, and then June through December would be 2011. It's important for your team to come out here and look at this. I wouldn't necessarily look at each individual account that's listed here. You do have the ability to do that if you were looking at a specific branch and a specific open date range. But I actually ran this for all members, so I don't really see many credit unions paging down through all of this information. I really see credit unions drill down on this option towards the bottom of the screen where I can see the totals for each individual month and what the scoring routine may be. So this would be a great opportunity to start thinking about setting goals for products and services per member, and then understanding where you are on each month compared to your goals. Regardless of whether or not you implement a tiered services program, the products and services per member is still calculated on the first of the month. So if you're not looking to jump into tiered services right away, you do have the ability to jump in to the products and services per member and reviewing this information on a monthly basis to ensure that you're on track to meet your goals. Obviously, you do have the print option via F14 that you can print this off. You may want to be weary about doing so or putting it out to your holdout queue if this happens to be a large report and you've run it for all members. But you may run it on a monthly basis for just those accounts that were open during that particular account date range. One thing I'd like to mention, as well as if you have any questions, don't hesitate to use the chat feature that we have available. As well as towards the end of today's class, we are going to open up we're going to take everybody off of mute, so that way we can get some questions through that particular delivery channel as well. So products and services per member is a huge piece of tiered services that you will definitely want to review and analyze and also configure tailored to your membership. The next thing I'd like to cover is some of the reports that are available on a monthly basis that are generated on the first of the month. So I'm going to bring this other window over here real quick where you'll be able to see the information in regards to what is available out in QSpy. So as you can see, I searched for the word tiered, and these particular reports are only generated on the first of the month. So you want to make sure that you're looking at the information and searching for a time frame that would include the first. The first report that I'd like to take a look at, the PT Serve 1 and PT Serve 2. These are two different reports that show the summary of all members within each tier group. So if I take a look at this one in the PDF version, It's simply looking at all my levels, what my point ranges are, what my number of members, and what percent of total members are in each category. Now you can see this particular credit union has 4,700 members, and this is a big point to take a look at, that this is scoring by member. Because remember that each credit union has the ability to perform or configure their tiered services to either be configured by household or to be configured by member. So we actually generate one report that shows the scoring by member as well as the scoring by household. So to reiterate what the household configuration is, that would mean that if I have a father, a mother, and 2 kids within the same household, and the father has a score of 950, which would put them in the platinum tier, that means that everybody in that household would receive the benefits for the actual platinum tier versus being scored on the individual basis where the 2 children's accounts may be basic and they may not receive those appropriate instant benefits that you may have configured. This is a configuration option by credit union, so you do have the ability to change or decide whether you'd like to score by household or by member. There are some caveats to that particular scoring routine where, say for example, you were to configure a negative balance limit for each tier. If you were to choose that particular configuration, the negative balance limit would be awarded based on the individual member score versus the household score. So there are some caveats to some of those configuration options that you may select. So this report you may review on a monthly basis to determine that your percentages are where you need them to be. We always like to see about 60% in the top tier, anyway, and then kind of filter down from there. So this credit union has their tiers set up quite well. We also like to look at the average products and services per member to ensure that we're kind of filtering up. So you may ensure that to get to level 2 or the silver platform, it's roughly 1 product higher and roughly 2 services higher. So if a member, you could use these as marketing schemes to understand that, hey, if you happen to open up 1 more product and roughly 2 more services, that would get you that much closer to that particular silver status or the next tier. Now, the next report that I'm going to look at is going to be very similar, but as you can see, actually the other report that I wanted to mention is by household, which happens to be, I believe, available right down here as the PT Serve 3. So let's look at that one real quick. Very similar to the last one we looked at, but as you can see, the percentages have changed, and we have the report scheduled by household as well. So again, here's my percentage breakdown as into what each category is. Regardless of whether you score by member or by household, both of these reports will generate on a monthly basis for you. Let's take a look at the next one, where I can actually allocate and look at what my totals are for each individual member, or each individual tier, for example. So this tiered service simulated scoring report is generated on a monthly basis, and this is very similar to what we'll see when we go through the forecasting option, but we break up the tiers a little bit. As you can see, we have 6 tiers that are listed here, but you're probably well aware that we can only have 4 different tiers configured within CU Base for the actual tiered data. This is going to give you a little bit of your balance sheet breakdown, where we're going to take column 2 is going to be the bottom half of your level A tier or your tier 2 tier. Column 3 is going to be the top half of your configured level A tier. Column 4 is going to be the bottom half of level B. Column 5 is going to be the top half of configured level B tier. And then column 6 is going to be your top or platinum tier in this case. So this gives you a little bit of a point breakdown to understand where your members may be, broken up within those tiers a little bit. So I have my total by application type in shares, where the percentages may lie. These are your application types. And then here's your loans. These are going to be your dollar balances first. followed by the number of members, and then the different percentages that are in there. I also have the percent of total members towards the bottom of the screen, where I can understand where my total members would lie and percentages for the appropriate tiers that are at the top of the screen. This may be useful to look at on a monthly basis to understand any tier changes that you may apply to the given tiers that you have out there. So maybe you wanted these 440 members in Tier 4, the bottom half of your third tier that you have configured to be allocated more towards this level. I may say that I want 400 to 749 to be in that particular tier, and then you can analyze it appropriately. Go ahead back out into QSpy here a second. To take a look at the other report I'd like to look at. Now, the next report that I'd like to look at is going to be a breakdown by each individual point goal that you have configured. So I have the ability to see the number of members and percent of members that would be allocated to each individual option. Again, this is something that will be available through the forecasting option. This is going to be the breakdown of how many members receive points for each of those defined parameters. So I may look at goal 1, see how many members are applying for this. And it counts the special dividend applications. This may be that checking account example that we talked about in one of our previous classes. If you see too high of a percentage or too low of a percentage, you may need to make changes to your tiered service program accordingly. So we will definitely want to run that and work with your forecasting tool multiple times to understand what is out there and where we may need to allocate the points and levels accordingly. So I may come down here and understand where also my marketing opportunities may be, because this is run for my entire membership. So I may look at my aggregate balance up to $99 and see that there's 44% of my members who have a share aggregate balance of $99 or less. That may be a group of members that I wish to market to, which would be identified through some of the tiered service information, or we have the ability to use some of our database generation tools within CuBase to market to those members. So your marketing team may be really interested in talking to some of these people and understanding where I may be able to have some marketing opportunities. Now, what I'd like to look at is the comparative tiered scoring analysis. This happens to be a great menu option where you can look at some of that data that we just looked at in regards to members and percentage of members, but look at that globally over a couple different months. So I could come in here and look at the months that I'd like to compare. I could, it automatically defaults to the last 4 months available. But you could change it to maybe different quarters or different years as needed based on what you would like to see. I'm going to go ahead and leave this. Actually, I'm going to drill down to 0511, 0510, and 0509. So that way I have 4 years worth of May information that I can take a peek at. Now you can see that this credit union obviously made changes in 2010 or 2011 based on some of the tiers that they have out there. But I can see my percentages over time. I'm going to go back into a different credit union so that way we can take a look at the information based on the last 4 months. So here's our screenshot where we can see all of the data that's available here. I can see my basic, my silver, gold, and platinum tiers, how many members were in each category based on each individual month. Now you can see this particular credit union probably made some changes between April and May, because I can see a jump in members in the basic tier. So you can immediately see the effect of what your memberships may be over time. So I see a lot of credit unions who will utilize this report in a board meeting type scenario or management meeting type scenario where you may understand what's out there and where your members may lie. I do have the ability to click on the detail, which would be for the current month, to show breakdown based on 4,700 members roughly, what the balances may be. I have my pretty graphs that I can utilize that I can export to Excel or PDF based on that particular information. I can bust out some demographics to see some percent of women and men as well as average age. I'd like to isolate those individuals as well for that particular information. So that would be my breakdown based on these individual tiers and where they lie. So say, for example, I wanted to communicate exclusively with my platinum members, this 149 segment of members. I click on this particular information. Here's my platinum members at the 149, which is 3% of my membership. I can simply choose export, and then I can export that information to immediately communicate with them via Member Connect or dump it out into Query to analyze further with some other statistics if you'd like to. So there's definitely some immediate communication points that you have the ability to work with for your members. I'm going to go ahead across the top here. We have some growth over time goals for number of members, as well as a tiered detail breakdown for each of the months that I have out there. As I progress across the bottom, I'm able to see my percent of members, very similar to one of the last report that we looked at in QSpy, to see how many members were allocated to each tier or each category that I have configured or parameter during my tiered service configuration. So I may look here and see that most recently I have 1,604 members, or 34.1% of my membership, that have these special accounts. I can click on the detail and see how many of those individuals, the 1,604 matches what we saw in the previous screen, are broken down by tier. And again, these are immediate contact points where I can immediately communicate with these individuals as I go forward. As I move forward, I have goal 2. So this is basically a marketing individual's or a marketing team's dream to have these immediate contact points. It's also important to show growth over time. So you may see that my aggregate balance is 25,000. Maybe I've set some goals internally at the credit union to grow in that particular parameter. I can understand what my parameters were, and then I can see my aggregate balances and how it's affected as I go forward. I see a large drop here between April and May, so I may want to analyze that a little bit further to understand where that aggregate balance may have lied. Now I can see that there's a big increase, or a 2.2% increase in over 25,000. So some percentage of my members may have gone higher, brought in further deposit dollars, or may have gone lower. So this is really out there for your team to analyze and talk about together and brainstorm. Goal number 3, we have our loan categories. I can see that I have roughly 0.1 of my membership that has an aggregate balance over 75,000. Now that may only be 5 or 7 members for this credit union, maybe more members in regards to your tiered service configurations. So these may be immediate contact opportunities for your credit union to work with. Goal 4 is a great option where I see a lot of credit unions come out here and analyze how many members they have enrolled in their self-service products, even if they don't have a tiered service configuration currently in place. So you may review this particular menu option to review how many members you have enrolled in e-statements on a monthly basis and hopefully see some growth over time. Or how many members have actually logged into online banking during the specific month. So regardless of whether or not you have that tiered services configured, you can come out here and check out that information. You may want to identify and market to these members who have a debit card, or maybe you want to look at the people who have e-statements enrolled. So if I were to look at this for the last 4 years, for example, I would want to see growth or non-growth, and then I can understand where my marketing opportunities are and where my goal opportunities are internally within the credit union. Have my growth over time options that are available here, etc. Goal 5 is going to be our member elected deposits option, where you have the ability to isolate these individuals as well. I'm going to go ahead and back up out of here. The tiered services monthly comparison is kind of nice because you also have the ability to take a look at how this may actually appear with other credit unions. So as you can see, we have the tiered services peer analysis from the MNMGMB option number 16 option, where I can look at some peers that are out there, either based on member range or asset range, plus or minus 10%, and also drill down by the scoring method, excuse me, whether it be household or member. So I simply hit enter. It's going to bring up a number of credit unions, plus or minus 10% of my membership. I can take a look at an individual credit union if I'd like to. Maybe I want to pick on or look at and compare my credit union to this particular credit union. It now takes that information from the most recent scoring date, and I can see where the other credit union lies and where I rank within my segment of groups. So very similar to our previous option, we have the ability to see all the different goals compared to a lot of other credit unions. I have some options available that I can compare to on some of the graphs, and also some averages as well within my entire group. I can also see where I rank in each individual category. So if I were to jump to goal 4, for example, I can see that I have e-statements enrolled at 30.7%. This other credit union has it at 5%. I'm ranked ahead of them at number 4. I can drill down a little bit further to see, based on that initial group I identified, by plus or minus 10% based on asset range or number of members, I can see who's the highest within the group. And this may lead you to believe or lead you to start talking about, wow, how did that credit union get to 46.6% of e-statements enrolled? Maybe they had some really unique marketing opportunities that I may want to analyze. So you may want to reach out to that credit union and talk about some of the marketing opportunities and some of the things that they did to get their membership enrolled in e-statements. So each one of these goals, you'll be able to see the information and understand where you rank next to your fellow credit unions that use CU Base. So this is a great opportunity for the peers to understand what exactly your members are doing and how you rank against some of those other credit unions. One of the other great learn from a peer tiered services options that we have available out there is option number 9 for the tiered services program configuration. This is a view option of your current configuration of tiered services. But if you go into F10, you'll be able to see other credit unions and how they have it configured. So I can mark credit unions with a star that are plus or minus 10% of my membership, or I could choose asset range. I could look at both scoring methods, household and membership, or one or the other, and I can scroll down here and see the credit unions that are listed. I could drill down and see contact information if I wanted to contact that individual. I can see compared to my credit union. I can see it right back and forth. I also have the ability to hit enter to go through some of the other information that they have out there. How many points are they giving for each individual level? So I can simply hit enter through these screens and see their different products and see their points that they are offering. So I may want to look at negative points and see what other credit unions are doing to understand what's out there and available. Immediately drop into contact information if you'd like to see that. I'm just going to keep hitting enter through the screens, and these are the same goals that would be available for you to analyze through some of those previous menu options that we were looking at. I can take a summary to see some averages in regards to some of the information. and then I can hit back up to go back. The summary would provide a summary on each individual screen based on what you'd like to do. Now, on each one of these particular screens, I do have the ability to click on any of these gray boxes to change my sort order in either an ascending or descending fashion to understand what is available and what's out there. Really some great opportunities to use and learn from peer information, especially when you're starting your program, to understand what is available and what other credit unions are scoring and how that can be utilized for your success. Now, the big one that I'd like to spend a little bit of time on is actually our forecasting option within the tiered services. So that's going to be available through option number 6 from the management menu. This is a great option where we'll actually, that you definitely want to work with multiple times, doing multiple different changes to understand what the forecasting may be. Now you do have the ability to see default ranges. This is going to be identical to the report that we saw in QSpy, where it's going to break up the bottom and top halves of your 2 middle tiers that you have selected. I do have the ability to check my highest score in the household for this simulation only, so that way you can see the breakdown between the member and household, and that may help you choose which particular option that you'd like to configure for your tiered services program. I can change the score ranges simply for the simulated scoring only if that's something I'm interested in. And that is something that you probably want to do so that you can understand to get your levels where you want to be, which would be roughly that 60% in the first tier and so on and so forth. Once I hit enter here, it's going to bring me into my actual tiered service configuration where I'll be able to see the information for each individual tier and understand how I'd like to see that information. Go to my other credit union here a second. Hit my default ranges. And it should bring me into my tiered services configuration. So that way I can look at what my default points are currently, and then I can decide how I'd like to maybe make changes to those particular points, and then understand where I may look at that information and make changes to understand how it would affect my tiered service scoring, for example. Really important to understand where your points currently are and how I can take a look at that going forward. It does create the same information that you see during QSpy, or the same 4 or 5 reports that we looked at. So as you can see here, I'm within my scoring. I can make changes here to the number of points that I have currently configured within my tiered services program to understand how it may affect my membership, and then I may do maybe suggest that changes be made to the tiered services program, or maybe suggest that changes not be made. Well, maybe I wanted to see if I were to increase this to 100 points, how that would have an effect on my tiers for the money market, for example. So I can make that change, I can make changes to my aggregate balances, etc. So you'll definitely want to run this multiple times as you move forward with analyzing your tiered services program. Those particular reports were generated as I went through that process. They're still running here a little bit because they do take a little while to run because there's a lot of data there. But here's the first report, for example. So I can look to see what the forecast is. So here's the configuration, what I have currently configured, and what is actually in the forecast. So I changed that money market option, for example, or maybe I changed the negative balance situation. I can see how many members would be affected and the percentage of members that would be affected based on that change. So always look at your configuration on the left-hand side of this report, and then on the right-hand side, look at what you have configured. I can then drill down to see my scoring report, either based on member and how my members would be allocated. I can also see it based on household. So you definitely have some options to see the breakdown based on your forecast. And then ultimately we have our tier breakdown where it shows the information that's out there. So the same reports are available each time you run the forecast option. So make sure to use these particular options multiple times as you start looking at your tiered services program. You can run these forecast options now. It has no effect on some of the configuration options that you have out there. I could come back out to the forecast. I could change my point ranges. Simply hit enter, and I can come out here and make other changes to see where my percentages may lie. So I may come out here and say, I'm going to say home equity accounts. I'm going to change that to 500 points, for example. I'm then going to run my forecast. Again, it's going to take a couple of seconds here for it to run, because it does run through the entire process that's run through at the beginning of the month. So it's a great opportunity to rerun that process and understanding what the changes may be. Program's still running here. So let's take a look at my first report. Everything looks good here. I want to look at the home equity information. See, I changed it from 200 to 500. That affected 39 members. So more than likely, the 39 members may score a little bit higher and maybe become into a higher tier. So based on that, here's my scored by member breakdown. I may look at these particular tier breakdowns versus what I have currently configured in maybe my adjustment screen. So I may be looking at my reports. At the same time, I'm looking at my actual tiered services monthly comparison. So that way I can understand what the change may be. So in goal number 2, or goal number 3, or your summary, I could look at my current percentages of where members may stand based on their current configuration, and I can compare that to what I have on my actual paper report that's generated, either to an OutQ or to paper, and ensure that my change is noted and what other changes I may want to make for that particular option. So definitely review, compare and contrast the information, and understand how it will actually change your membership when you run through the process of tiered services and the forecasting. The forecasting is a very powerful tool for tiered services, so that way you have the ability to understand what those changes may be and how they may affect your actual configuration changes if you're working with your management team and brainstorming on an actual change. Definitely lots of power for you guys to use there in regards to the forecasting. The last one I'd like to mention before we open up some of the telephones for some questions is that we do have a couple of files that you do have the ability to query. A couple of those files, one of them is going to be the tier DL file, which is going to show my breakdown, for those of you who are query fanatics, of each individual member, the last score date, which would be the first of the month, their score level, the member score that they have, the score that they had via each part, and then also the points, lifetime points, reward points, etc. Also products and services per member by month, and so on and so forth. So this particular file has a lot of information that you could utilize to create custom queries for Member Connect opportunities, marketing opportunities, outside of a lot of the automated options that we had available through many of the monthly comparison options, because obviously if you want to market to any of these members, I can just drill down and export right out through the dashboard. The other file that I'd like to show you is our Tier DS file, which may be of importance if you happen to want to review reward points, formerly called lifetime points, so that way you can see what type of redemptions were made. As you can see, I have my new points options that are out there. If I happen to have something in my reward points catalog that may be a hat maybe a logoware of some kind. I may query for everybody with a transaction description with that particular logoware item description, so that way I can understand how many points were redeemed during a particular month for a particular product of my catalog. That may be important, number one, for inventory, as well as to understand what your cost analysis may be for each individual product that you have within your reward points catalog. So these are definitely two files. If you're a query fanatic, that you may want to look at and understand what's available for you, either on a monthly basis or just knowing that they're there for marketing opportunities and for touch points that you may want to communicate with your members. Definitely lots of tools that we've covered today that are available in regards to what-if analyses, in regards to the forecasting, as well as a lot of the different reports that we have available that are either automatically generated, such as the monthly scoring analysis that you have available here on this particular screen, as well as the reports that are out in QSpy. More often than not, I see a lot of credit unions using the comparative analysis, which is available from the management menu, rather than the reports that are out in QSpy, because you have those immediate touch opportunities to market to those members. Obviously, I see a lot of credit unions use the graphs, the PDF options, drilling down to that member detail to include in board reports if that's something that they're interested in, as well as maybe even using that compare tiered service statistics in the Learn from a Peer option for brainstorming as to what you may want to forecast. So if you're unsure of what to forecast, you may first go into the Learn from a Peer to understand what some of your peers are doing, and then you may move forward with forecasting how that may affect your members and what level they currently have. Outside of that, we'll go ahead and unmute the phones to see if you guys have any questions. Hopefully you learned something today. If you have any questions, I'll stick on here for a little bit, and we'll go from there with any questions that we may receive.
I have a question. I don't know if you can hear me.
Absolutely.
This is Amy at Mountain River Credit Union. So those 5 goals that were on the bottom of a bunch of those screens, we don't set those goals up individually. Those are constant and part of the program for all the credit unions, right?
That is correct. Those goals, if you can see my screen here, come from the tiered service actual point system. So if I come out here and view the information, goal 1 is the primary financial institution relationship. Goal 2 is the savings. Goal 3 is lending. Goal 4 is self-service, and then Goal 5 is your member elected deposit configurations. So those are something that is definitely something that's out there that would be available to you so that you can isolate those individual point ranges, but the actual goals themselves are hard-coded.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Great question. There appears to be one question that was initiated through the chat in regards to consulting services available to credit unions to set up the program. Most definitely. There are definitely some consulting services that are available. I'll have Kinsey send you guys out some information that is available for the consulting. We have some phases that are available based on your level of interest, where we can actually review marketing material. We can run some of the what-if analyses with you, and also provide some suggestions as to what we've seen with prior credit unions. So that's definitely something that we'll get out to you guys in regards to some of those services that are available. Not only is that available to credit unions who are looking to configure the program, it may include a couple of 1 to 2 3-hour sessions where we may do an introduction as well as some reviews of some information that's out there. But also, if you'd like us to do the work and actually configure the information, it may become a pay-for-play situation. But definitely services are available for that.
Is this tiered service information in that show me the steps, or just one of those little booklets that we can go to on CU Answers to kind of give the, that shows it in writing or whatever?
Absolutely. Our tiered services guide, don't know if we have anything in Show Me the Steps, but obviously if you have some ideas, you can always submit to Show Me the Steps. I might work with some of our technical writers to understand what we have out there for tiered services. I don't think we have a whole lot that's out there on Show Me the Steps, but we definitely do have our tiered services guide. Happens to be 100 pages, great reading material. I happen to have it up right here, for example. It's called our CU-based Tiered Services Implementation Guide, and it literally goes through some of the options and a lot of the options that we've covered in our first 3 classes, as well as some what-if scenarios as to some goal opportunities, etc. So definitely take a look at that information, and it's definitely out on our website. Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions from anybody else?
Can you just give us a heads up? What's the class for next week?
Next week, I believe, is going to be a review of everything that we've covered. If you have any questions that you're interested in really deep diving on what we've covered so far, love to talk about those. So if you have any questions that you think of in the next week, send those over to Kinsey, and we'll definitely cover those particular options. But other than that, we'll kind of do an overall review of what we've covered in these last 3 weeks.
Okay.
If there's no other questions, you guys are free to leave. Hopefully you guys will enjoy your day. We'll move forward with next week's session. Look forward to seeing most of you there and reviewing some of the things that we've covered today, as well as covering any questions that we may receive in the interim time frame. Don't hesitate to give us a call if you have any questions in regards to any of the information that we've covered, as well as any of the information that you may be looking to find or implement your tiered services program effectively. Look forward to seeing you guys next week, and thanks for coming, and enjoy the rest of your day.